Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is port this cylinder head. Finally got around to this because I've been working on, you know, that and that. Anyway, stuff. So this is the cylinder that I flowed already, which was up a tiny bit just by getting rid of the swirl, and mostly in the mid-range. But I did a mild port job on it. So this one, this is the stock port, and you can see how much constriction there is there. Even worse here. And this is what it looks like ported. And I tried to, I didn't take too much material out, honestly. I just tried to shape it so there weren't all these dedunes in there. If you don't know what a dudune is, if you have an internal port and there's like a dent in it, like a push rod tube or a head bolt, that's the noise the air makes when it hits it. It goes dudune, and yeah, you don't want to do that. So especially this port here, which I'll put a picture of the 3D scanner up here in the corner there. It's got lots of little dudunes in it, like one to miss the valve seat, one to miss the this, one to miss the that, one to miss the, you know, cooling port. And the reason that's like that is, and I know this because I did some work for Ford. Not, my paycheck didn't say Ford on it, but I was doing work as a consultant from another company for Ford Motor Company, and they have this design book that basically says any cast surfaces have to have like a 3mm tolerance. So that accounts for positioning of the cast surface versus machining surface. So anything cast to cast, I think, is like 4mm, and cast to machine is 3mm. Because, you know, you can't locate it perfectly, and the casting's not going to be perfect, and the machine's not going to be perfect. So, so they leave all that, you know, they just go, well, just put a big dent in there. So make sure you don't get a misrun. Because if you have a misrun, it costs you zillions of dollars, right? So they'd rather take the hit on some flow performance. And on a passenger car, only 1% of the population really cares. Half of that actually test it, and the rest don't fucking care at all. So don't hardly care at all. I gotta watch my F-bombs or something. So anyway, I got that ported. It doesn't, you know, it's not super huge. Like, I didn't go big with it. That's what that looks like. I don't know if it's gonna focus on me. But the light is super important to see the shadows and see where you actually are. So really long fingers are a super advantage to porting stuff because you can feel it. So that's stage one, and as you can see, I left kind of, I didn't open it up really. I just took all the bumps out of it. You can see down in there, but right down in here, you can see that is the port, that's the port core parting line for where it comes out of the core box. So, I mean, this material, there's a bunch of big bumps in here to clear, right, to make sure it has no clearance there. You can use some, like, in some instances you have to chop the head in half, but in some instances you can use a thingy like this, and you can go in here and see how much thickness you have left. So I got like 3.5mm left there. So I can go a lot bigger if I wanted. The internal water jacket cores are a little bit more, you know, challenging to get to, but that's why you have a football head. You just saw it in half and see what's in there. Or you hack a hole in it and go, oh, I went too far there. So, and then typically what you do is you flow this thing, and after you flow it, you can pile some clay in there, you can modify it, flow it again, right, and keep doing it. It's an iterative process. So the fact that it's an iterative process, and this particular head has guides that stick way into the ports, you do something a little bit different, and for a couple of reasons actually. So as you can see, the valve guide sticks way into the port, so there's no real way to get. And some heads, that's not a big deal because there's a big blob around it anyway. Come on, flashlight, do your thing. There's a big blob around it anyway. Like that one has, the exhaust has a little blob on one side, but not on all the sides. So the problem with that is you want to do some porting on it, and you want to put it back on the flow bench. Now you got to put the seats back in, or you can't flow without the seats. So typically what I do is I make some fake seats, and these are just slip fit. So they just slide in, and you can top them. You can leave a little bit of a press fit at the top or whatever. Put a little tape around it so it stays in good when you're flowing it. The other reason to use these, and sometimes I do make solid ones, so you just shove it in from the back side here, like that, but you leave it solid. That would be a different part. And then when you're porting that, you're not falling into a hole with your grinder, right? You're just making that a nice contour, and then you knock it out and put the valve guide in, and then, because it's really hard to keep the grinder from wanting to fall down that rabbit hole. So that's another trick that I've used in the past. I didn't use it this time, but I might when I go to a little bit bigger stage of this porting. So we'll see what we get. I kind of want to get in the 230 to 250 range on the intake and 200 on the exhaust. That's my targets. I don't know if I'll be able to get there, but that's what I'm going to try for. So that's going to involve, you know, I'm doing it in stages so you can see what makes what difference. This is not going to flow 240 to 250 as is, but I'm planning on going with some bigger valves, and I'll have to weld the seats out and put some, you know, bigger seats, bigger valves. And then the shape of the valve matters, so typically I just pile bindo on top of these things and put them on the lathe. Make them look like what you want them to look like. You're probably wondering about, I did this, this little piling clay in here when I ground the swirl dam out. It's like, well, that's not going to run for very long. True, that won't run very long, but I can weld this in, right? I can just, that guy there, turn it up to 11, and just fill this all in. And then machine the shape to what you want. And it's not a lot of fun grinding, right? Well, I mean, I find it fun because I like the challenge, but once you do one, the other 7 are a pain in the ass, or in that case, the other 9 are a pain in the ass. So a lot of people do, you know, CNC porting with 5-axis fancy machine, but you really don't need a 5-axis machine. You just don't. All that fancy moving this way, that way, it's not necessary. As long as you have clearance so your tool doesn't smash into something, you're fine. So you can usually set it up on some, you know, crazy angle, whatever, and get to 95% of the port from going from this side and going from this side, and then the rest of it you can just hand blend. And that's perfectly acceptable way to do it, and you don't need a fancy piece of equipment. I mean, you need a CNC, you need a 3-axis CNC, which there's one sitting over there somewhere. One of these days. So anyway, that's my plan. I'm going to get these guys in there, get the old flow bench fired up, and see what this thing does. Put your guesses down there before you poke to the end of the video, right down there. Boop. Scroll up and then over and then comment. So in this case, I machined this little part here. So now you can put that combination valve seal and spring shim, and that'll hold it in. So once I put the baby spring in there, that'll hold that to the right distance. I have this little step here to set it into the head the right distance so it can't fall through. And then the spring cup slash seal does the job. Hold it in. Okay, so I wanted to kind of demonstrate, like when you're flowing stuff on the flow bench, it makes a lot of noise, so wear your ear protection. I think you can probably see down there okay. But this is just a piece of welding wire, and actually what I found works the best is if you take a shop rag, and there'll be a little like piece on the edge of the shop rag where they finish sewing it together, and just kind of tie that around the end of the wire, crimp it on there, and then when you turn the flow bench on, that has enough area. You can see how thick the boundary layer is on the wall and how well it's attached. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit here. I'm going to try anyway. I'm not sure how well you could see all that, but definitely you can tell by the noise, and this has enough, you know, kind of fluffiness to it that you can see, like you can see it going all the way around. If you look at it now, it doesn't go around the valve stem, the valve guide. But when the flow's on, it sucks it right around the corner, so it fills the backside up. So, and you can see there's a little bit of fluttering in here, and like if it's on a nice thin piece of, this is I think 40 thou stainless steel wire. So that works pretty good to see if it's flippity floppity or not. So you can learn a lot, and then when you go back to it, again, this is an iterative process. And it does different stuff at different valve lifts, so this is at 14 millimeter valve lift right now, but you know, you can do it at whatever valve lift. Typically the port shape doesn't really matter at really low lifts because it's all curtain area driven anyway, but this is a good tool and it doesn't cost anything. It's literally, you know, fluff from a shop rag and leftover hunk of wire. You could use a coat hanger or something, I suppose, but anyway, safety tip number 674. I got one more for you though. Okay, so when you're porting on stuff, wear those. Maybe those. And you need some sort of lubricant, which a lot of people just use WD-40, which works pretty good. However, if you're in an enclosed area, that kind of stinks, and it's probably not good to breathe it. And so if you're in a enclosed area in the winter, you don't want to open the door and let ventilation out, whatever. This works actually better than WD-40, but it's just I don't have it most of the time. And you're not going to believe me when I tell you this, but it totally works. It works really good. It's the best. Arm roll. Don't ask me why I tried it. I just have to have it one day, and you just put a little spritz on there. It keeps your carbide burrs, doesn't stink, works really good. Anyway, you don't have to try it, but I highly recommend you do, because it's better than WD-40, or what works the best is actually Tap Magic Aluminum, but it's really, really stinky. But you could have a burr completely loaded up with aluminum and put a little bit of Tap Magic Aluminum on there, and it'll like all the aluminum will fly right off, but stinks like hell. Another tip is Air grinders are terrible. They make a lot of power in a small package if you need to get into someplace, but you have to have I have a 7.5 horsepower compressor, and that thing will go on every 5 minutes just running a die grinder. Like 7.5 horsepower. This takes 100 watts, which is a lot less than 7 horsepower. Like 100 times less. So efficiency is not very good. These work really good. This is a Makita. I've had this for 25 years probably. The problem with this is you need a speed controller with it. And it isn't so much the speed controller that's the problem, but now you got this tangled bunch of wires and unplugging this and remote positioning of it and stuff. Again, I've had this for 20 years and it's, you know, I've had to replace the bearings in it and duct tape a few things together, but totally works awesome. I highly recommend it. But instead of buying another one of these, because you don't want to keep changing your burrs out for different lengths and different I decided to get another one. Actually, I have a couple of these. And this is the same, just a newer version of it, but it's not the same because, see that? That looks like Europe. They did that on purpose. Came with an adapter, so you can plug it into 110, but this is designed for 240 volts. So at 240 volts, this spins 24,000 RPM, whatever it is. I forget. 28,000 RPM. Too fast. You don't want to go 28,000 RPM. So this goes half that speed because it's basically a DC brush DC motor, and those are not based on frequency, they're based on voltage. So it goes half as fast, and it's like really close to the right speed that you want. Especially for if you have a long one, you don't want to spin those 28,000. So these work really good. They're super quiet, they're super light. They have a nice balance to them. And what I mean by that is you never want to hold the burr like on something for a long time. You want to kind of do this, so it doesn't dig a hole. And if you hold it right here, it kind of pivots and it makes a nice kind of a pendulum. So highly recommend these. The other thing nice about it, if it's cold outside, you use an air thingy. The air going through a turbine gets colder. It's just thermodynamics. So if you put 70-degree air, compressed air into it, it's going to come out at, you know, -5 or something. It's not good. So on a cold day, your hands just freeze off. The whole thing gets cold and your hands get cold. These actually keep your hands warm, so it's nice. I mean, maybe if you're in Phoenix in the middle of the summer, maybe the air thingy's nice, but in general, I'm not in Phoenix. And then the other thing is you want a decent light. And I don't mean decent like expensive, I mean decent like shitty. Like some crappy little $1 light here. The battery costs more than the light, and you can just jam that into the port. And if you hit it with the grinder and it gets all dirty, nobody cares because it's junky. But it fits in the port, and because you're looking, when you're trying to make the port shape, you need some shadows. So the other thing is I like to use just a little cheapy paintbrush to brush the chips out of there. You could blow them out, but then it makes your shop a big mess and gets down here and in your socks and stuff like that. So I just brush it out of the way. And then you can kind of see more of it because the chips accumulate a big pile in there pretty quick. So anyway, there's always more little tips and tricks that you're going to learn. I'll try to share those when I think of them, and I just do stuff, and I don't. It's the hardest thing about teaching is understanding what you know that other people don't know. And if you don't know that, you don't know to tell them. Like, you just assume Diego knows how to spray paint something with a spray paint can. He may or may not know how to do that. So, nothing against Diego. or anybody else. That's just trips around the sun. I've had plenty of them. So anyway, like, comment, especially comment. If you have any like crazy questions, please shoot them my way. I always like a challenge. This isn't actually the results from this particular test. So this is basically comparison from the stock intake. So this is the stock intake in black from a previous video. And this is the modification, just removing the swirl dam and piling clay up into the combustion chamber to make a nicer combustion chamber shape. So you can see pretty good gains in the mid-range between 6 and 9 millimeters. Some small gains elsewhere, a couple percent here and there, whatever. Nothing to sneeze at. If you look at the old video, you'll notice these averages are different. That's because I averaged it from 1 to 14 instead of 15. So I'm not going to go to 15 millimeter valve lift, so no use doing that. So this is the latest. So this is the leftovers from the best of the last test. No swirl dam, combustion changer. And then this purple is with the mild porting. So you can see pretty nice gains from 180 CFM up to 205. And pretty chunky gains, you know, up 15, 20%. Some places, 10% easily. So pretty nice chunk of gain there. This is up on par with probably an SVO head right now, which has the swirl dam removed and the valves bigger and the valve's center line moved. So I'm not going to do any more porting on this particular head. The next thing I'm going to do is go to some larger valves, and I think I'm going to go 1840, 1540. So get this is a turbocharged, well, super/turbocharged application for my Bronco. So I want to make sure I get the exhaust flow as decent as I can. Thanks for watching. If you like this content and want more, subscribe, like, and share.